Well, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Rakowski here, and I've got my guest, Dr. Paul Reed. We go back a few decades. Here's a guy that inspires me in so many different ways. If you take a look at him, watch what he's doing on Instagram, Facebook, you're going to see he's fit, he's strong, he's motivated, he shows up as his best and getting better self in service to something bigger than yourself. So, Paul, let's talk about your journey. And by the way, this is a repeat podcast. We had plenty of requests to get you back. So,
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me. Yeah.
you're very welcome. So, one, how did you get on such a path? How did you get to be a chiropractor? And then now, what inspires you to inspire others? It's powerfully as you do.
Yeah, man. So like a lot of us, I had a chiropractic experience when I was a little dude, right? So I had my first adjustment when I was 8th grade, boogered myself up in some sports, and my dad took me to the chiro, and is a whatever 13-year-old. I didn't know what it was, what it meant, what I was doing, what was going on, but I got off the table. I'm like, man, I would really like to do that when I'm done with my sports career. I held that line ever since. Met my, current wife the next year as a freshman in high school. You're always, oh, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. I'm like, I didn't know what it took, how long I had to go to school, how much it would, any of it. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, so I had that, what I later understood is that, the adjustment connected man, the physical, man, the spiritual, and, set me free. And here I am 28 plus years into my career. So yeah, it's been a hot minute.
Well, you know what? We all love when we have that experience. Not every adjustment is a miracle, or maybe it is on some level, but maybe people don't like get the full impact of the miracle. So that was mine as well. I was in so much pain, couldn't even lift my eyebrows without pain from a neck injury. And all of a sudden I get this adjustment. It was frightening. I actually thought the guy broke my neck, and I laid there. I didn't move. He looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Did you break my neck?" "No, try it out." So I move it. Also, he adjusted it the other way. And I'm like, whoa, this is amazing.
You know? Yeah. It's a great experience. And again, look at your saving and changing lives, doing it too. So it inspired you.
Now, I've had plenty of patients that have had that, right? Where they get that, and I've had plenty of patients that have spun off to become chiropractors on their own. Do you recall the first time that happened in your clinic, or any very favorable?
What times, and I was intentional about telling young people, like, man, you make a great chiropractor. You should check it out. We saw a lot of kids, a lot of athletes, a lot of kids. So I was always trying to speak life into them and encourage them to check out chiropractic. Cause again, there's not enough of us. If we were doing our job, if we were truthful and honest, if we were doing our job, we do not have enough chiropractors on the planet to service everybody that needs to be checked and adjusted when needed. So yeah. Yeah.
So how do we get that message out there? One at a time, I certainly have patients that still say, "Hey, I'm thinking about becoming a chiropractor." Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't happen every time, but I guess we're not all called for that. But how can we enhance this?
Man, I think just more of us, one, making and creating more successful chiropractors. We have a lot that aren't successful. And I think if they saw more of us succeeding at a high level to inspire more people, one, because people want to succeed. And then two, just more of us sharing, like just not hold, I think we're great at, kind of like Gideon, right? We're great at hiding in our four walls in the wine press and doing our thing inside of our practice. And we really don't get outside of the practice and share our truth and be bold. And I think if more docs were open to, expressing the benefits of chiropractic to their communities, that more people would be inspired to do it instead of hiding in our four walls and just doing our thing and going home at night. So,
Well, it's interesting you bring up Gideon, right? So if people don't know the story of Gideon, biblical hero. In fact, I think he's in the Hero Hall of Fame. But he was called. He got his calling, and he kind of hid. And he's like, "Wait a minute, you got the wrong guy." No, no, no.
hey, let's stay down here and hide. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't all answer it. So when did you realize that your calling went beyond one-on-one clinical practice and to literally train hundreds, thousands of doctors?
Yeah, honestly, but it truly was that first adjustment. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I would become a chiropractor, but serve chiropractic just on my heart at that time. And then again, just being around other successful docs. ChiroFest, you've been to it selfishly is to inspire the next generation so that my kids' kids can understand chiropractic and know chiropractic the way I know chiropractic. And I, we're 15 years into that. And which, hard is, it's over half my career has been dedicated to running that event and keeping other docs inspired. And so it's, again, selfishly, um, it's part of my DNA, man. And I want more docs to embrace the power that we have in our hands and our power to inspire people to live the way their body was designed to be running at high level, look at yourself. I mean, like you're a fit machine because you're doing the things that you know to be true and how the body's supposed to run. And, if more chiropractors adopted, lived it, breathed it, it would ooze out of them and we would naturally inspire more people. So I just, you know, want to honor our sacred trust and keep it on, keep on keeping on. So it's, yeah,
Well, there's so much you said in that can spill over to everything else, right? So my screensaver used to be "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future."
yeah.
But so, who has inspired you as, your first chiropractor, that amazing adjustment, but since then, who inspires you now?
Man, the list is long, to be honest. If I look back at the mentors that I had, obviously my doc that I saw growing up is the one that, got me into chiropractic. But then I look at my chiropractic journey and my first mentor slash coach was Ron Oberstein, who's now just stepped down and retired from being the president of Life West. And, I started working with him 6 months before I opened my practice. Got to meet him at an event, say, hey, again, being an athlete, I'm an advocate of having coaches in your corner, people that can support you and, quote unquote, they paid the dummy tax. They know that, how to shorten your learning curve and accelerate your success. And so I started working with Ron 6 months before I opened. And, a lot of my career path has been, I attribute a lot of the, I obviously did the work, but he pushed me in the right direction. Right. And then I, sought out more mentors and then more mentors. And I still have mentors in my life. It's just in the different arenas. I think it's just important that we all have folks to, for one, accountability and two, to, we get blind spots, we get stuck and we can't see where we're going and what we're doing. And we don't know what we don't know. And, a lot of times we know what to do, but we just can't get out of our own way. And, we need somebody that needs to body check us and say, yo, so let's go. Yeah.
Well, I like how that evolved with you. And by the way, when we start looking at athletes, one of my favorite books was Everyone's an Athlete. Some people just don't realize it or haven't trained it yet. Lately, I've been on this binge on flow, the human flow state, where things are timeless and you're at the right amount of effort versus challenge, and you're profoundly satisfied. And athletes have 45% greater probability of getting into flow than non-athletes. But let's just address the non-athletes for a moment. What do we want to do with them first? People that don't recognize that they're an athlete.
Yeah, I think it's a train thing, right? Same thing with, you're talking about flow state, like chiropractors, they just haven't, like, you can't get into flow state if you haven't established a system or a process, the same as a team, right? Like Jordan, when he's in flow state, he shot hundreds of thousands of shots when he was not in a game. So in preparation to get himself into that state. And it's no different with any profession, right? Like we are all, like you said, every single human is an athlete, whether we know it or not. And it's training yourself, being disciplined, staying consistent, and giving yourself the opportunity, reprogramming your neurology, right? We're neurology doctors, and it's about that programming of the nervous system to be able to achieve that flow state from readiness.
Well, that is one of the things I like about your videos because you seem like you're there. But let's go there because most people doing what you're doing, they'd be suffering, they'd be focusing on the pain. So, how did you build that bridge from discipline to pain to pure enjoyment to flow?
Right. Honestly, it was, I first started, again, referencing working out, like my first early on working out was a means of working through mental discomfort, right? Like, think things that, when things weren't going right, I just went to the gym. When I wasn't happy, I went to the gym. When I didn't perform well, I went to the gym. When I got, was frustrated in a relationship, I went to the gym. Like it was my source of my,
So you got a good dopamine from him from that. Wow.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And then again, I think it's just, again, I have programmed it into my DNA and I've seen, benefits outside of physical training and all other aspects of my life from the physical disciplines. And I'm a firm advocate that your physical discipline will build all other disciplines. It'll build your spiritual discipline, your mental discipline, your food disciplines like that. Physical discipline will build all other disciplines into your life. So
Let me build a bridge to something that I've told people for years with that. And that is that very, very simply, everything works together. The brain is there to serve the body and vice versa, but the body is the primary input to the brain. And then I'll just ask people, I want you to visualize, picture yourself, maybe even get back into the being when you were in the absolute best shape of your entire life. Think about how you felt, think about how you managed stress, think about how hopeful you were. And then let's go to the other extreme. Think about when you're in the absolute worst shape of your entire life. And by the way, I usually make this statement. By the way, I hope that's not today. I was lecturing in Georgia a few weeks ago, and I said, "Hey, who in the room is in their best shape?" A few people raised their hand, and some of these people were 50, 60, 70. I thought, well, God bless you. Well, one of my mentors said years ago, if you can still do at 60 what you were doing at 20, obviously you weren't doing much when you were 20. Well, so, you've crossed that big 5-0 mark. I crossed the big 6-0 mark. I've lost 2 steps since I was 20, but not 3. But man, I don't know what you were like when you were 20, but you don't seem like you lost anything, at least the way you show up that I've seen.
I mean, I'm a step or 2 or a step and a half slower than I was, and not quite as strong, and I gotta, I've learned to train smarter, not harder in some instances. Like, I still love to push and still love to go deep into the pain cave, but I've learned to manage my limits, just based on, breaking myself in the past. It's mid-50s, like, breaking yourself now takes longer to get back than it did when I was in my 20s. So I got to be a lot more intelligent, just because I simply know that that piece of my life is big, and it helps me keep, my head clear, my heart clear, my mind clear, and, my spirit clear. And so I can't not do without it. So I really have to make sure I'm being intelligent. And like I tell a lot of my docs I'm working with now, because again, you're exactly right. Like, if I could, and my docs that I work one on with, I'm like, listen, the biggest shift in your life right now to course correct your business, your relationships, is you getting in the best shape that you've ever been in. Like, they're like, what's the one thing? I'm like, that is the one thing. Like, the systems and process. And if you're in the business and all the other things, if you're incongruent with where you need to be, like, there's just this constant internal dialogue that's not satisfied. And then, I say it's a form of self-defamation, like, where we're not rewarding ourselves for doing the work. We're emotionally beating ourselves up, talking bad about ourselves in between the ears, and that it just destroys progress. It destroys happiness, destroys relationships, because you're not happy with yourself. So then you're not going to, express the way you're feeling. And there's just so many benefits, as to what you said, to taking care of yourself and staying in the game. Yeah, 100%.
One of my mentors was not in shape 3 or 4 years ago, and he went to Necker Island and had a private with Sir Richard Branson. He says, "Look, I want to take my game." Now this guy was already worth a healthy 8 figures, maybe approaching 9. And Sir Richard Branson said, "Hey, the entrepreneur of the future is going to realize that fitness runs the world, and you need to be fit, and you need to dedicate." So now we're 3.5, 4 years later, and he's much further along. He actually underestimated the task. If you've been
Yeah.
neglecting yourself for 55 years, it's not likely to get in shape in 3 months. But you know what? 3, 4, 5 years, he's a new person and
Oh,
likely feeling better than ever. So, how do you build that bridge? Let's go with practitioners. Now they're going to be fit. Now that they're feeling better, showing up better. What's the next step to get their business better, or the starting step, maybe, besides taking care of them?
and I see a lot of them that don't really fully understand, one, they haven't implemented systems and processes. And, in any great business, I don't care if it's quote unquote the mom and pop shop versus, Chipotle, like or In-N-Out Burger. They all have a systems and process. And the ones that, I see docs that get quote unquote fatigued and burnout. It's because they don't have those systems and processes. And so they're memory managing constant chaos instead of knowing who's reporting to who, what's doing what, when you're doing what, how you're doing what. And so helping them establish solid systems and practice, no matter whether it's one office or 10 offices or whatever it might be, that comes next. And then the second thing would be, make sure that you're pouring in and training your team. So many of them don't invest in their team. You can't run a business without your team, especially a successful, high level, profitable business without a solid trained team, and staying consistent in both of those things. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. Maybe it was Zig Ziglar that said this. He was talking about the importance of training your staff, training your team. He says, the only thing worse than training your team and ultimately losing them is not training them and keeping them.
yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. An untrained, unknowledgeable, unsupportive team is just dead weight. It's an anchor. Like, they just, and again, business owners don't understand the importance and power of that. And really, we all speak and we want freedom. We want the ability to go do the things that we love and enjoy. But unless you, one, establish the process to train your team on, and then are training your team, you're never going to have that freedom to be able to step away and allow the business to run, without you. So it's super, super,
Yeah,
super.
I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, but if your life had a billboard, right, and you only have a few seconds snapshot to read it, what would your billboard say? And then I'll tell you what Jocko Willink said his would say, which was the same as Aristotle. And if you knew the answer, I think you'd get it because you resonated. But any ideas if you had a billboard, what would it say?
Mine, man, again, serve something bigger than self. Um,
Okay, I like that.
yeah.
Jocko Willink said, "Discipline is freedom."
Oh,
And Aristotle said the same thing.
yeah,
And so, I see people that don't want to get locked into a system because they feel like they lose their freedom, not fully getting that the system has to be dynamic enough to create freedom.
yeah,
But once you have that, you're freer than you've ever been.
yeah. And to his point and Aristotle's point, like, we're 1000% right. So physical discipline creates physical freedom. Spiritual discipline creates spiritual freedom. Financial discipline creates financial discipline. Relationship discipline creates relationship discipline. Or, so that freedom. Yeah, so that it applies to every aspect of life, and that's you know, I live by that model, like trying to be super disciplined in all areas. And I'm not perfect, right?
Really,
I'm perfect, you know.
we- you're doing as good a job as anybody I know, and so, Paul, I have some patients that I have 3+ decades of data on. And I've got very few, but I have one or two that have been more disciplined than me, and not by much. But you look at them and they're crushing it in every area of life. And I just don't see why people don't get what you just said. You want to create disciplines mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, impactfully. But you have a hierarchy on that. Physical is number one.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go next. What's the next discipline that people
For
need?
me, it's spiritually, yeah,
Okay.
spiritual, and then family, and then financial, and then fun. So that's my 5 5S. So it's fitness, fitness, faith, family, finance, and fun. So
Well, fun was last, but here's the amazing thing. The way that you prioritize everything. I mean, I've run into you on the road, I've run into you on ChiroFest, you got people pulling you in every different direction, yet you always have a big smile and you seem to be the happiest guy I'm seeing. So, it's clearly working.
yes, well, thank you. And that's a trained thing too. I was a linebacker, so a lot of times I'm like, dude, lose it. Man, are you mad? I'm like, no, I'm just hanging out. Like, we got an RBS. I'm like, I'm just chilling, man. That's a linebacker in me. So
Did you play college ball?
I did, yeah, Washington State, yeah, yeah.
Okay. But no aspirations of pros, or it just wasn't good.
No, I truthfully, yes, as a little dude, I did have some aspirations. Towards the end of my career at WSU, I showed up got my scholarship as a linebacker, ACL. Back to a few steps slower. Our defense, Mike Zimmer was our defensive coordinator at the time, and we were top 5 in the country for my entire career there. My skill set just wasn't, I wasn't there defensively. I lost a step, so I shifted, and I ended up, my last 4 years I was a center. So but again, got to play, got on the field, got to snap the ball.
You were a center.
I left.
You animal.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I ran into a guy actually, and I just met him at a gas station. He shook my hand. He was actually taking a survey, and this guy had the most powerful handshake, but he was shorter than me. I'm 5'7", so this guy was maybe 5'6", 5'5", and he shook my hand. I said, "Man, that's a powerful shake. What was your sport?" He says, "Football." I said, "What position?" He says, "Nose tackle." I said, "Oh my God, nose tackle.
And somebody that's small, man, it's hard to get low to block that dude.
You must have more animal in you than anybody I know." Yeah, that low center of gravity,
Yeah.
but yeah, they have a whole lot of mass. So
Yeah.
what was your playing weight when you were center?
When I left my after my 5th season, I was 280-ish, 282, 278. Yeah.
What are you now?
230. Yeah.
Okay.
231, 228, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I knew you have some good size, but 280.
It was force fed. It wasn't my natural. I ate late every night against everything that I know now, right? Or like I was I was on the milkshake pizza diet. So it was
Well,
whatever.
and by the way, a lot of high school coaches were promoting that, and even college coaches back then. But I had a guy years ago at 15. He was the first guy to sign a 4-year deal with University of Texas as a lineman. And at 15, he was 6'4", 330 pounds. And they were force feeding him at that age, and he still had something ridiculous like at that age, he still had like a 5'0" 40 at that size.
Wow. Wow.
Now his dad played 4 years of Division I, and I don't know why he didn't make it to the pros, because when you look at that size, that skill, that speed, you just come to realize that's a very, very, very different demographic to try to involve
People.
people. Let's talk about some of those daily disciplines. So let's go into spiritual discipline. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, kind of my rhythm. So I'll just share my daily, what I can, what a morning would look like. So I'm an early guy, so I'm a fan of a morning routine. There's some folks that say it's not, but again, I think that little bit of time you spend in the morning, no matter if it's 30 minutes or 90 minutes, is really foreseeing how the day is going to work out. Right. So I'm a morning guy. So coffee first. Own a coffee shop. I like my coffee. So coffee first, right? Yeah, I know. Yep. Coffee first. But then, so then I do some quiet time, yeah, either devotional or scripture or something, think about what I just read, journal what I got from that. Personal development book, same thing, whether it's a couple pages, a chapter, whatever it might be, or a few chapters, journal what I got from that, write out my goals. Again, visualization, prayer time, and then gym time. That's kind of and again, I coach and inspire and hope to encourage docs to not make it an event, right? Like so many people make a routine, a rhythm, a pattern, a habit, or an event. And then if they make it an event, when life happens, because life will happen, kids are going to wake up sick, alarm's not going to go off, whatever it might be. And then they skip it, right? Oh, I don't have the 45 minutes that I need to dedicate to doing that thing. Instead of just doing, you know what? I got 5 minutes today. I'm going to do a maximum set of push-ups or a maximum set of air squats or jump squats or something. And then they fall out of rhythm, right? Just because they made it this big monstrous event instead of just creating the habits. And so I just encourage docs like, listen, like, yes, if that's your perfect day, it's not always going to happen. So but make sure that you stay in rhythm, stay in habit so that you don't fall out of rhythm, out of habit and look back like, oh shoot, it's been 6 weeks, 6 months. Now it's this heavy giant lift, to get started again instead of just having done something that day.
Well, it's pretty amazing how quickly anything unattended deteriorates, right? So we can talk about our physical self. If you're non-weight bearing for a number of days, it's quantifiable biologic aging.
Half life's like hours, like it just, yeah.
And let's spill that into everything. You neglect your relationship, it's falling apart. You neglect your spiritual self, it's falling apart. I want to know a little bit about fun, but so we've got fitness, faith, family,
Finance. Yep.
finance. Okay, so
Business, finance. Yeah. Yeah.
let's go with that. So what type of disciplines do you teach people? And by the way, maybe I'll take a break since you mentioned coffee. BetterCoffeeShop.com is our sponsor. Here's the fact: 94% of coffee around the world has herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, molds, mycotoxins, and/or microplastics. BetterCoffeeShop.com. We're all tested to be pure and clean. Won the award, the best organic coffee in the world, 2 years running. BetterCoffeeShop.com. So let's go now. Financial, I imagine you want to take an inventory, then you want to pick a target, and then what disciplines do you create to get there?
So, again, unfortunately, a lot of professionals, business owners they've never set a target. They got into business, and then the classic is we make more, we spend more, we live outside of our means, and I was, blessed to have a wife is really good steward with finances. And so we'd set some goals. We set some lofty goals where we wanted to be, in regards to debt and assets by a certain age. And then it's really simple math, right? You got to work backwards. Like, oh, I have to grow and scale by this much. I need to keep my overhead within this means so that I can make sure that I'm putting this amount away. And again, then just doing the work. And so, but first and foremost, people have to have a vision of where they want to go and if married, come into agreement on that number. Again, the other thing I see is some folks like the husband that I'm working with wants this, but then the wife thinks this, and there's just that incongruence, and that incongruence is never going to allow you to succeed. So come into an agreement with your bride or whomever on the number that you want to have and then timeline, right? Put a date stamp on it by 50 or by 60 or whatever it is. I want to have this many assets, or by this time I want to be debt free. And then again, work backwards of what it's going to take. And then it's as simple as doing the work. And so
Doesn't that apply to everything? You're talking about your physical fitness. Okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose it in 10 weeks. That's a pound a week. I got to have if we go with the calorimeter, the 3,500 calorie deficit or extra training or the right keto diet but then you keep track along the way. You don't expect to step on the scale 10 weeks from now and be where you want to be.
yeah.
Those periodic checkups. So now tell me about fun. Do you discipline in fun? Do you plan?
I just build in, I build in again if I'm fully transparent, and honest, that's the hardest part for me because I would be considered a constant workaholic. Just the way I've saw parents that worked and worked and worked and worked. And so that's something that's why it's one of the foundations to make sure that I am prioritizing doing, checking out, right? We need to, if we're always looking at what's next and never what we've accomplished and taking time to enjoy what we've been blessed with, then life's short enough as it is. But if you're always pushing and pushing and pushing and never turning it off, it's going to be even faster and shorter. And you're going to get to the end of life like, what the heck? Why didn't I smell the roses a little bit? And so I really, again, it's one of my harder things, but I find enjoyment in the things I'm doing. Working out is fun for me, right? So it's, I kind of group things there. But again, I think you need to find things. I enjoy walking with my wife. We enjoy golfing together. We enjoy traveling together. So those are all, and again, I build those rhythms into my daily habits because it's important to me. And so, just finding things that you enjoy. And again, it doesn't have to be, I'm taking a 10-day vacation. Like, find things that you enjoy on the regular that you can do and build into your rhythms. So,
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a guy that's a multi-billionaire, you know, they described him as a workaholic. He says, "Well, given that I enjoy what I do, and I can't just seem to do enough of it, right?" And that seems to be who you are with that. So build fun into everything else, but also recreation. Stephen Covey talked about the things that are most important in recreation. We recreate ourselves.
yep.
Well, a little break, and you're doing that consistently with your training and renewal with your relationship and your God, and which is that the same God as most God, right? As far as we know. So
100%.
let's say we've got someone listening and they say, okay, I'm so far away from all that. I'm not fit. I don't know where I want to go. I don't have a good inner circle. Would you have three practical tips for that person that's really stuck at the moment and not sure where to go?
A lot of people, so practically, yes, if you are stuck, first and foremost, you need to spend some time thinking. Again, I think we are so uh, pushed to be busy. Like, we never set these down. So we're never allowing downloads. Right. And so we're always thinking, like, just go, go, go. And so I think first and foremost is you get clarity on where you're supposed to be and where you want to go when you spend time thinking. So whether that's, out, again, we were told as a child to go lay in the field and look up the sun and the stars and dream. And so but even as just a few minutes of quiet time, really thinking, and you're going to process and get downloads of what's on your heart and where you want to go. And so I think that's first most is spend some time thinking.
I want to say a couple things about that right away, Paul. So the first thing foremost, right? Put this thing away, because this is a weapon of mass distraction. So once you put that away and leave it away for a long period of time, you talk about this.
From the beginning, but you can do it.
You also said the word download, which I'm going to call that receiving, right? So if you sit there and say, "Okay, God, what do you want for me? What's the meaning of this beautiful life?" And then just be open to receive what comes next. And I always like that. Listen, your first step is probably not going to be at the top of the mountain, but we want it to be in the right direction,
Yeah.
and only through getting clarity. So step one, get quiet, get clarity.
Yeah.
How about step two? What's the next?
What the clarity would be too is getting clarity on where you want to go. What you want life to look like. What's, again, your finances, your relationship, your spirituality, like really what I think that's really what has driven me, and then future pacing yourself beyond that. Like, okay, well, here's where I want to go. Again, most of us are stuck in the day to day and really not like, we want a future pace of practice. And we're like, listen, if you don't fix this, if you don't start getting your spine adjusted, eating better, moving better, thinking better, visualize yourself where you're at now and add 20, 30, 40 years to that. Is life going to be what you want? And we're, trying to be self-directed, where most folks don't do that for themselves. And that's why they end up, quote unquote, in a rut, happy or unhappy and dissatisfied on so many planes. And so seeing where you want to go and then future pacing yourself, like, okay, if I don't do these things today, if I don't build in these habits over the next X amount of time, then I'm not going to be where I want to be and fulfilled, more importantly, down the road. So first is thinking, then getting clarity, and then building in the habits to get you to where you want to go.
Now, I want to bridge to Tony Robbins real quick, because I've done a bunch of his events, and he's going to tell you the same thing, and he really wants you to feel the pain of continuing on the same path that you are. Because let's face it, most of us are on a downward trajectory, and then if you start realizing that that's going to accelerate over time, where you can be in 5 years, you don't want to be there. But now let's start that upward trajectory, which starts out very, very slow, imperceptible. Maybe you don't feel 1, 2, 3 months much different, but 4, 5, 6, you're feeling different. The world is seeing it. Then you start getting that upward acceleration. How beautiful. Then building the habits, which was really the title of this podcast. I'm going to ask your opinion on this. Tom Morris, who I think is the world's greatest living philosopher, maybe one of the greatest of all time, he has asked Dr. Morris, why are good habits so hard to form and easy to break, whereas bad are easy to do? Opposite, right? And so, what was your take on that? Be
I equate it to building a house, right? Like, to build a strong house, gotta start with the foundation, right? You gotta level the dirt, build the foundation, put the studs up, like, and it doesn't like start to look like a home until you start putting sheetrock on and things go. But you can light a house on fire and it's gone in hours, right? So it's just, the habits are hard. But again, you got to start simple and most importantly, keep on keeping on. Like folks just, I like to say stop stopping. So many folks run into obstacles and not really knowing that obstacle, whatever it might be, is really, if you lean into it, you're going to grow through it and become a better person on the other side of it. And most people run into an obstacle and they put on the brakes, they get frustrated, they go around it to find an easiest path, instead of leaning in that thing. And I think all those obstacles are run through little God lessons. Like he's just forging you into the next best. But again, most of us, because we want quick fixes, the shortest path to success, we don't acknowledge the things that we're going to learn from those obstacles or pain points. And then we end up, if we don't, we're just going to spin our wheels longer versus leaning into those things and leverage them and then grow. Yeah.
Well, so true. The philosophy I like about that is if you get the lesson, you graduate. If you don't, the lesson keeps repeating.
Yeah.
So if there's a recurring theme in your life, recurrent obstacle, you haven't got the lesson yet. So someone like Dr. Paul can help you. Maybe on some level I can, I'm good with that one-on-one. You're good at making the whole world better. And leading, as one Nobel Prize winner said, there's only one way to lead: by example, by example, by example. And you do that. So I'm looking at the clock. We clicked off 30 minutes. It's nothing. So what message do you want to wrap up with? What do you want to share with the listening audience of how to make their world and our world better?
Just pour in. Like the world is no good if you're sick or dead, right? So make sure that you're taking care of you, do the best things. We can't predict everything, but you can certainly do a lot to make sure that you are performing to your best and creating your next best life. So just take care of you and the world would be a better place.
And I'll pair what one of my mentors said: we all have the same mission: show up as our best in getting better self in service to something bigger than ourselves,
Amen.
even though that can be a moving target.
Yeah.
Dr. Paul, it's a joy. It's absolutely amazing that this time flew. I think we'll have a third and maybe a fourth and a fifth, because it's so easy to talk with you and share your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Let's make the world better.